Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to the show. We're thrilled that you're here and enjoying the content. This podcast is completely free for you, but if you'd ever consider supporting the show, we truly appreciate it. One way you can do that is by using our affiliate links. These are links to products and services that we've mentioned on the show. And if you make a purchase through one of them, we might earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. It's a great way to show your love for the podcast and help us keep creating awesome content.
Blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates, and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you all for subscribing to the podcast, all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all of the support that we receive from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere that podcasts are available. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet, and stay tuned. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. I'm so excited to share that the podcast is about to hit its 1,000 download mark on Apple and Spotify and all of the charts. And I'm just really excited to just share in that. And when I started this journey of creating a podcast for the cleft community, I didn't know what to expect, but the podcast continues to grow and people continue to share their stories, super valuable stories. I've gotten such wonderful feedback from other cleft moms that are waiting to have their babies or really are in the midst of their journey now. And I just think it's just so valuable. It's something that I wish I had when I was pregnant and when I gave birth to Giselle. So just really excited that we're reaching so many families on a global level as well. We're in 17 countries. So wild to me. If you want to share your story with us, please email me at ourforeversmiles@gmail.com and we will be happy to get you scheduled to share your story. But today we have a wonderful guest here who is really in the midst of her journey, ready to share her story as well. Melissa is the proud mom of two boys, Matthew and Liam. Her youngest son, Liam, was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate and VSD. He recently received his first set of surgeries at Children's National Hospital on May 3rd. Just so you all know, we are recording this on May 18th.
Yeah.
So to do this is, oh my goodness. Melissa recently started a nonprofit organization called Cleft Lip Warriors to raise funds for other families that are facing craniofacial anomalies. It has been an extremely emotional journey as a medical mom, and Melissa hopes to provide some insights as to how to navigate medical challenges related to cleft lip. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here today on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me as a special guest. And thank you to our audience, too. I'm just very grateful to be a part of this and also grateful for you for creating this podcast and just bringing a stage so that other families can get some insight and resources as to how to navigate everything that comes along with having a child that has craniofacial anomalies. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. I did have a question, like when I was reading your bio, what is VSD?
Yeah, and I actually took good notes too because it's a long acronym. So it's ventricular septal defect. I guess in layman's terms, Liam has a large hole in his heart, alongside with having the cleft lip and the cleft palate. At my 20-week anatomy scan, I was told that he would also have heart difficulties. So they labeled that as a VSD. He actually gets an echo done at Children's National once a month just to see how things are progressing or not progressing with the hole in his heart. So it is obviously very unfortunate that he has that, but with all the technology that is out there today and all of the resources that I've found, we are dealing with it. And right now he's thriving. As you had mentioned, he just had his first set of surgeries at Children's National. So on May 3rd, he had his cleft lip fixed, and he also has had his nasal deformity fixed. So he's coming along nicely, but it's definitely been an emotional roller coaster just dealing with everything that comes along with that.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or subscribe button. If you're able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so, so much. Back to the conversation. Yeah. So I know someone that has, I believe, is it Tesier 30? It's a cleft that's at the bottom of the lip instead of the top. And I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. I know someone that has that, and their daughter also, I believe, has a heart defect. Mm-hmm. Do you know if any, from what you've learned along your journey, do you know if any of that is like related to each other, like the cleft and the heart issue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. From what I've been told from his cardiologist at Children's, it does typically, when you do have these craniofacial anomalies like cleft lip and cleft palate, you can also get a VSD as well. And I'm also friends with a lot of medical moms, and it's just a hit or miss. Some of them, their child does have the cleft lip and palate, or they just have the cleft lip. Some of them have the cleft lip with the VSD. So it seems like it's like a mixed bag of those three different medical conditions. So it really depends. But to answer your question, yes, it can come along with having the cleft lip and the VSD all together.
Yeah. What are because Liam is 10 months, right?
So he's actually 11 months, and he will be turning, he will be turning 1 in the next few days. So he will be turning 1 on May 26th.
Okay. And so it's obvious they waited a little bit longer to have these surgeries. Is that because of his?
So that's actually a really good question too. What we were told by his plastic surgery team is that kids as early as 3 months can have the surgery to correct the cleft lip and cleft palate. But we decided to wait because he wasn't gaining the amount of weight that they wanted him to be at. And then also we had the surgery date scheduled, and then he got COVID, which was really scary. So it took about, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks for him to get over COVID. And of course, because if you're having that intense surgery and everything, like you can't have him get his cleft lip fixed and everything. So we had to push it out. And the next availability that they had for him to get booked, it ended up being several months out. So that's why we had to wait so long for him to get the surgery. And then another thing too, along with his heart, they did want to monitor it longer and just see if the large hole would start to close up on its own. And Liam also had to be on Lasix, and Lasix, it's to treat fluid retention. and swelling that's caused by congestive heart failure. So he was on that for months leading up to his surgery. And then prior to the surgery, he was weaned off of that. Then he became eligible to get the surgery.
Oh, okay. So has he had heart surgery, or were they doing the repairs? Or I guess, sorry, I just got so stuck on
that.
Did they? Yes, I mean, I can't imagine it. I just in my thinking, I wonder which you concern yourself with the most, right? Because although some people will say, oh, it's just a lip, right? We all know in this community that it's not just a lip, right? There's more that is entailed. It's not just an easy fix. It's not just a quick surgery. So there is a lot there. Having to make maybe in your heart, right? What is the one that you concern yourself the most about?
The heart. That concerns me a lot. And that was really hard too, because so at my 20-week anatomy scan, that's when I found out about the cleft lip, and they weren't sure about the palate. They said as he gets bigger, then they'll have more information. And that was really difficult too, because at that point, and I had multiple losses prior to Liam. So it was difficult because in my mind, without knowing what else was going on with him, I just couldn't really prepare for hearing any other bad news. So then as the pregnancy progressed, I had an appointment with the cardiologist from Children's National. So when I was still pregnant with Liam, she came in and did the ultrasound, and that's when she found out about the heart defect. And, from that point on, it was just, and it's still on my mind too. It's every month when he has to go in and get his echo done at Children. I'm always wondering, is it closing up? Is it not closing up? So he's in this gray zone area right now where they don't know if he's going to have to get open heart surgery or not. And especially since he's only 11 months, it's very difficult to think about your baby having to get open heart surgery, because with any surgery, you just never know what could go wrong. So that's just constantly in my mind. And the cleft lip and the cleft palate, those can be corrected through plastic surgery. So yes, it has been difficult, especially when I got that diagnosis that he has cleft lip and cleft palate, but definitely the heart condition, it scares me. It really does, because I don't know what's going to happen next. And that's the thing too, with just being a medical mom. It's just that everything changes each day. It's like you think you're an expert in one area, and then the next day, like everything just changes. So it's definitely been very difficult.
Yeah. What would you, if you had your wish today, what would you want to happen? Are you aiming more towards, I just want this relief of being able to have this surgery done, like this open heart surgery is a big thing? Or would you want, I guess maybe that's a silly question, because obviously you don't want him to have to go through surgery. I guess you would want it to just close, right? Like on its own. But what if that takes a really long time?
Yeah. Yeah. And been very emotional thinking about that, and just with everything that has happened, and just seeing all the pain he's been through, especially like leading up to him getting the cleft lip and cleft palate surgery. It's hard. I wish that he didn't have the VSD. It's just something that he has to live with. And I'm hopeful that in time the hole will close up. And I hate hearing that he's in this gray zone, because there aren't any answers right now. It's just going to take time. And that's always been, like, throughout the pregnancy with Liam, that's the way that it's always been, is that I've always been in this gray zone with no answers. And it's just, you have to wait and see what will happen. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
So you talked a little bit about like your pregnancy, and I'm making the assumption that you all were trying, and you mentioned that you did have some losses, and I'm sorry to hear that. And so when you finally find out that you are pregnant and you're ready for Liam, what was your reaction, and what was your family's thought process when Liam came about and you knew that he was confident and here to stay?
Yeah. I feel like because so I've had 3 losses, so I'm very grateful. I have a 3-year-old and then I have my 11-month-old Liam. But I felt like this pregnancy with Liam got robbed from me in the sense that because I've had losses before, I I didn't go, I was excited, but then at the same time, it's like every doctor's appointment that I had, it was always like this thought in the back of my mind. Am I going to lose this baby? Am I going to hear those words from the doctor? There's no heartbeat. So that constantly was just on my mind, like when I went into these doctor's appointments. And although I was excited and the doctors just kept telling me, like, you need to be happy, to be excited, it was definitely hard for me. But my family, my friends, the community, just all have been super supportive. I think one of the hardest parts for me was after I got the diagnosis at the 20-week anatomy scan that he would have the craniofacial anomalies. It was just resources. That was the hardest part, was figuring out what type of specialists I should see. And then, of course, there was just a lot of unknowns as far as why did this happen? Was it related to genetics? And like, why me? So I'd already been through so much. So, of course, I was like very happy and excited, but at the same time, there was just a lot of emotional things that I had to sort through and figure out. And that's why I'm extremely grateful for people like you who have been through this and that you're a Cleft mom and you've seen this firsthand, because I do feel like there aren't a lot of, I think it's very hard to find resources and that support group to get families through these difficult times, especially after receiving the diagnosis of having a baby with a, cleft lip or cleft palate.
Yeah. I think like going into that anatomy scan, it's always like, I haven't had any losses, but even still going into the anatomy scan, it's like they do it for a reason, right? To just make sure everything is where it's supposed to be and just functioning properly. And so you're always holding your breath. And I empathize with you, like having to go in and not necessarily being able to like have that excitement. I know a lot of people go in, I get to find out the gender today and I get to know and stuff like that. And yeah, I can understand that, how you experience that. And it must have been like really challenging for you. Did they tell you about the heart defect the same day as the cleft lip?
No. So what ended up happening was one of the techs, and this is one thing that is so hard too. I just remember I was at that appointment and the tech was super chatty with me. And then all of a sudden everything became quiet. And she said, I have to get the doctor. And so when the doctor came in and looked at the screen, he said, oh, there's a little blip on the baby's feet. And so he said not to worry. And they just said that they'll refer me over to some specialist just to do a more intensive ultrasound to see if there's any other defects. And then I remember they gave me a brochure and they said, don't Google anything, just schedule your next appointment and we'll discuss things in more detail. And as the baby gets bigger, then we'll have more answers for you. So that was definitely difficult because, of course, like we always want to Google everything and just do research, especially when it's your baby. You want to know what's going on. No, I didn't know anything about the VSD. That I found out that information later on in the pregnancy.
Oh, so you were sent. So you learned about the cleft lip first, and then VSD after.
Right. Yep.
So were they bringing you in? Were they bringing you in for additional ultrasounds after that? Some people's experiences are different. Like, for example, like I only had 2 ultrasounds my entire pregnancy. And
you're lucky. Wow.
But it was like the first one that they do to make sure to confirm that you're pregnant. And then I had my anatomy scan. But because I was like really nothing to write home about, to be honest with you. And I actually, the other part of this is that I didn't find out about my daughter's cleft palate until she was born.
Right.
So Yeah, so they didn't really have, it was business as
Hmm.
usual type of pregnancy. But yeah, so I hear some people after they get their diagnosis, they are turned over to, what is it, maternal fetal
Yeah.
medicine or high risk. But so other teams are just like, it's just a cleft lip or palate. And so they don't schedule additional like checks, or they just treat them as a quote unquote normal pregnancy. But yeah, so you were having continuous ultrasounds after that.
So this is going to sound outrageous, but I counted how many doctor's appointments I had with different specialists. I had about 50, almost 60 appointments because I was considered high risk because of all the losses that I had. And they just wanted to make sure that this baby would go to full term. So correct, I did. So I saw my OB. I was with Capital Women's Care. And then I also went to Greater Washington Maternal Fetal Medicine. I also saw an endocrinologist, my primary care doctor, and then through Children's National, I saw the cardiologist who monitored the pregnancy.
Oh, wow. So wait, so they can monitor the heart in, like they can monitor his heart in the
Yeah,
womb?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
that was really interesting too. I guess when you reach that point of where you've had so many losses, they just treat you a little bit differently. Yeah, there's definitely different technology and just different types of ultrasound that they use to do like a more intensive check of the baby. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, I was going to the OB at least 2 to 3 times a week because I was doing stress tests. And yeah, the whole goal, obviously, I mean, with anyone's pregnancy, like you want it to go to full term, but they knew like from all the losses that I suffered, how traumatic that was. And they were all rooting for me to have this baby. So I'm just very grateful that he's here today.
Talk to me about your birth story. Were you induced, or how did they handle bringing him
So
into the
yeah,
world?
so this was a bit traumatic. So I was going in for a routine doctor's appointment, and so what ended up happening was my fluid levels were low. And apparently, if it's below a 5, I'm not really sure too much about the scale or how it works, but I know if it's below a 5, that it's considered a danger zone. So went in for
Hmm.
that routine doctor's appointment, and this was in the morning. And they said, okay, your fluid levels are very low, and you need to have this baby today. So then the first thing they asked me was, did you eat anything this morning? And I said, yeah, I had some like toast. And they said, I'll never forget that. I said, yeah, I had some toast and some coffee. And they're like, oh, we wish that you didn't do that because you're going to have to get an emergency C-section. I had to wait, I think maybe 4 or 5 hours until I could have the C-section, but they wanted me to go to the hospital right away. So literally they said, go home, pack a bag. You're having this baby today and go to the hospital and we'll get you all checked in and we'll go from there. So later that, I think it was around 6:30 that he was born. But yeah, like literally that day, I had no idea going into that routine doctor's appointment that he would be born later that evening. So it was very quick. And then I was able to really see how his cleft lip looked and everything. Because throughout the whole pregnancy, every time an ultrasound was done, he would always cover his face. So it was very difficult to see what type of cleft lip he had. Was it, was it on both sides? Was it just one side? So, but either way, he's such a blessing. He's such a cute baby, a lot of personality. So just very grateful that he's here. But yeah, it was just an emergency C-section, not totally not expected, but I was just so happy that I had that appointment that day because who knows what could have happened, especially with my fluid levels dropping. So,
Yeah. Why did they say that about the food? I never understand why they like different places are like there's so many, they do things so many different ways. I feel like it's like TSA. It's, you don't know the rules until you get, whenever you get to the airport, there's like do you keep your shoes on? Do you take them off? But so for example, like with me, they kept sending me home and I was in labor for 3 days and I just wasn't like, I was fine. I was just in labor. And so they were waiting for me to get to 5 centimeters and I wanted to have a natural birth, but I was exhausted because I had been in labor for so long. And so when I got there, when they finally decided that they were going to admit me, I was already 8 centimeters. And she asked me if I wanted an epidural. And she didn't even get to finish. And I was like, yes, immediately. Like when I got there, I like almost jumped in her arms. I was so like happy that they finally admitted me because I was so exhausted and I was in so much pain. I've even heard these stories of people who are like, oh, it's too late for you to get an epidural because, or you can't eat. And in my situation, it's just like, you don't know if I ate or not. Like you could have not said anything. And then what they have done, of course, you're not going to do that. And nobody's going to do that because you don't want anything, if there are complications, for it to be like, maybe I should have told them I had.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I understand that. But it's just so, yeah. So what was the decision? I guess, what was the reasoning behind that? Like you can't eat before having
that's a good question. I need to do more research on that, but I guess I don't want to say anything wrong, but I guess with all the preparations that they have to do for the C-section, it just could cause complications. But I wish I didn't eat that toast. It was so random because I just wasn't expecting that. I was hungry, just ate something, went in for a routine doctor's appointment, wasn't thinking about it. And then it's, oh, you're going to have this baby today. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, it all worked out.
Sometimes I hate when my mind goes to this though. Like I don't know. I get like, are they just trying to make me have a C-section, like to get me in and out? Like I think about those things. Like, did I just give you all the right answers to fall into your little trap?
It's funny that you say that too, because the OB had to make a bunch of calls to get all the paperwork done in order to have me admitted to the hospital. They have a strict list of things that they have to follow. So that's interesting that you bring that up because I feel like they go by a certain list and of things, requirements.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the thing that is important is to bring a healthy baby, right, to the world. And so however they have to do it, sometimes we're just at their whim, right? Like we can't, I guess you could deliver the baby yourself, but
oh gosh, no.
Not recommended.
Well,
so what was your reaction when you first saw him?
Just so in love. I think it's hard nowadays because, and just in my opinion, we live in a world that's full of vanity. And when your baby is born with certain birth defects, you wonder, okay, like, how is this going to play out? What are people going to think? And that did cross my mind. But then after seeing him and holding him and just thinking about everything that I had gone through to have him, it was just pure love and just super excited to just get to know him. And since this was my second baby, it wasn't my first rodeo. It was just helpful too that I already had my other son. I felt like I was more of an expert of how to take care of him. But he's just such an amazing child. And again, just very grateful. Children are blessings. And even though he has these health issues and everything, and it's okay. He's no different from any other child. And he's just such a great baby. So.
Yeah. I love that you said that you couldn't wait to get to know him. I remember that's my daughter. She was admitted into the NICU and I was discharged. And that was a really hard experience for me. And I journaled about it and I was writing, and that's one of the things that I wrote is that I can't wait to get to know you. And it's interesting. It's a weird feeling to like long for someone that you don't know. Like but it's like you feel this instant attachment to them, this instant love. And I feel like mothers explain that over and over again, right? Like we're talking about it now. And the people that do not have children, it's you listen to it and you're like, oh, yeah, I can understand that. But it's you don't even know until it happens to you. Like until you have a child, you don't really understand that
Right.
connection. And it's the most fascinating thing in the world. Like it's like a
Right.
switch that turns on. And yeah, I think a lot of people are concerned about the way that their child will look. I think part of it is like I've mentioned here before, right? Like you want, like, yeah, everybody wants a little cute baby. Who doesn't,
Right.
right? But then the other part of that as well is like you want them to be able to go through life with ease. You don't want them to be face any bullying or any extra attention or whispers about their appearance. And so you think about that too. And I don't necessarily feel like that makes us like vain or anything unless you're just like harping
Mm.
over it. But I think that's a genuine
Right.
concern.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up too, I just remember, or there's been several occasions where I've brought Liam out and a lady actually came up to me and she said, "What's wrong with his face?" And she was just like, what? Obviously, he has a birth defect, but I think there's just so many people out there that are just misinformed about cleft lip, cleft palate, and these medical challenges. And it's just really unfortunate. There was another person, we were passing by her, and Liam was in the stroller, and she just looked at him and pointed, and then pointed at her mouth as if I didn't know, like he had, the little cut in his lip. Of course I know. That's why it was like very important for me to just find as many resources as possible. And I think that's also how I met you, was through the R Cleft Lip and Palate support group on Facebook. That was extremely helpful for me. And then also when I was listening to your podcast too, just hearing other stories from other families, that was very helpful for me as well. Just getting really involved in the community and just talking to other medical moms or medical parents, it's just been so helpful because, again, there's just so many people that are totally misinformed. And it's really sad getting the word out there that it is okay to go through all of these health challenges, and it is okay to find like resources and get the help that you need to get through these challenges. I think is really important to discover.
Yeah. When I got into those groups, it was actually pretty late in the game, but one of the things that helped me out so much, like even they were so helpful, and I was like, for some reason, I don't know, after postpartum, it's like you're a little not right. And so I when I got in there, I was reading things and I'm like, wow, you too? Like for some reason I thought I was like the only one. I know I couldn't be, but like to read and see stories of like moms that were going through the exact same thing as me was like so
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And I felt like it was so reassuring that not only the medical professionals that I was working with, like they knew what they were talking about, that I could like put my trust in them, but also like that what I was experiencing was normal for her journey. And yeah, I think that was like so important, and just continuing like to share our stories is really important and critical.
Right.
What do you think is like the thing that you like have learned, or like the best like tip that you've learned from just like reading things in the groups, or just like from your experience in terms of like feeding?
So feeding was the biggest challenge, or it still is a challenge, obviously, since Liam just went through his surgery. But that was it's been the biggest challenge. And I actually have some of the feeding mechanisms here. I know there's a lot of different bottles out there. So this one right here is the Medela Special Needs bottle. And this was super helpful. You put the milk in here. I used a formula. The breastfeeding didn't work out for me, unfortunately. And then it's just like a syringe. You squeeze it at the end and then you pour the liquid into here. And then there's three different, it's probably hard to see, but there's three different levels on here. There's a long line, a medium sized line, and then there's a short line. So depending on what kind of flow that you want, you squeeze the syringe and you line it up to the baby's nose, and then it will let out a certain amount of formula or or breast milk. So this was very helpful. So this was the Medela special needs bottle, and they're very expensive. They're like $40-$50 a piece. I just remember after I gave birth to Liam, the hospital, I kept asking them if they can give me like a couple extra, and they were just like, oh, we don't want to give out too many because, yeah, they're very expensive and sometimes they're hard to get. That one has been.
Does the Medela have a valve?
Oh, so there's a filter in here, but here, I'll pull it apart so you can see it. Yeah, so there's a filter.
Oh, it has its
yeah, like this, and then you put it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I that helps with the flow.
Yeah.
So this one was really.
And is that what you use for Liam? That's one that you use for Liam?
So leading up to the surgery, this one was used constantly. And then after the surgery on May 3rd, we had to transition to the famous tender care feeder. I don't have the little syringe part on here. It fell off, but this has been very complicated to use. He doesn't like it. And I think also it's because he's in a lot of pain too, since he's had a surgery. But he had to go back to the emergency room after he had a surgery because he was just extremely dehydrated and he had to be hooked up to an IV. So that was really difficult. But yeah, so after surgery, the doctor said he has to use the tender care feeder. And it's just, again, the syringe isn't on here, but you just squeeze it into the side of his cheek. And I think the purpose of that is so that he doesn't actually suck on a bottle. So it just squeezes right into the side of his cheek. Yeah, so we're using this right now until his next doctor's appointment, which will be in like a couple of weeks to do a check-in to see how he's progressing since he had the surgery. But yeah, very difficult. And then I was also told about, this is called a May Mom baby feeding cup. So this is another feeding tool that we've been using as well. You just put the liquid in here and then you just put it up to their mouth and just dump it in. So this has also been working too, but it's definitely been a challenge to get liquids in him. And when he did go back to the emergency room just recently, they wanted him to be syringe fed as well. We've been doing that too, but I just feel so bad squirting lots of liquids into his mouth like that. It just, yeah, he's been through a lot.
Yeah. So he, did you try solids at all? Was he on solids before surgery?
Yeah, so he was on solids before, and so now he can go back to the solids. But after surgery, we had to wait about, I want to say 4 days. And then, so he's not doing like a ton of solids. It's more like a puree diet. So I think within another week, he can go back to having more of the solid foods. But it just really depends on his pain level, which has been very difficult.
Yeah. So the doctor didn't recommend going back to the Medela. Like if he can tolerate it, would you go back to it? Because
that's a good question. So I think they want to wait until he has his first checkup because they're worried with the incision that if he goes back to the bottle, it could potentially mess up the dissolvable stitches. So they don't want him to start like chewing or sucking on the bottle and then risk the incision splitting open. I think once he has his next appointment, they'll determine whether or not he can go back to the Medela special needs bottle, or because his cleft lip has been closed, maybe he can explore a different bottle. And we did also try Dr. Brown's, but he didn't really like that bottle. I know my 3-year-old, he liked that when he was a baby, but Liam never took to that. So we'll see. And then also because he's getting older too, Liam, he can drink from a sippy cup as well.
Yeah, I encourage all moms to explore their options. I know that Dr. Brown's is like out there, very common. And even like my feeding team, they're like, oh, you didn't like Dr. Brown. So we tried, and I was just so frustrated with the bottle. I swear, like that thing, it would work in office, and then we'd get home and it would like not work, and we'd be feeding. I'd be like sitting there feeding her for 15 minutes, and then just to realize that she hasn't eaten anything. And poor girl is just like, and I'm like, I'm done with this. So we switched to pigeon.
Oh, I've heard it. I've heard
and
it.
she loved it. Like she was in hog heaven. Like she wanted a faster flow. She was so eager to eat. That wasn't an issue at all. She wanted to eat. She liked to eat. It's just she couldn't get it out of the bottle. And we switched. So I would encourage anyone, like if the Dr. Brown's bottle is not working or you're struggling with weight gain, just switch it up. I guess I'm speaking from a place of privilege too, because the bottles can be expensive. But if you can, just get one. Or there are tons of people in the moms groups that will be willing to send them to you. I sent I sent a few of the pigeon nipples that I had left over. They hadn't been used or anything. I still have valves. So please reach out to whoever, to any mom that would be willing to send you like a nipple or a valve. And for the pigeon, you can connect those to the Dr. Brown bottles. They fit. The pigeon nipple and the valve fits on the Dr. Brown's bottle. So yeah, I would encourage anyone to switch whenever things are not working. But yeah, we also...
Oh, I was going to say that's really great advice, because that's actually the only bottle that I have not tried. So that's on my list. So that's a really good tip.
Especially after he hasn't had a palate repair yet, right? He's going to have that
later on. So he has, it's called a submucous cleft palate. So I don't,
okay.
So I don't know when he's going to have that looked into. So I'm assuming that's going to come down the line. So I was told that there's going to be multiple surgeries coming up. So I guess only time will tell.
Yeah. That's a good one for cleft palate, the pigeon, because that's what my daughter had, a very wide cleft palate, and she did wonderful. She was able to work with that really well. And then we syringe fed after palate surgery, so she was already on solids pretty much, because we did baby-led weaning. So what we did after surgery, because that's why she was grumpy too, because she was really hungry, but we would put like yogurt and stuff and just put it right in her cheek through the syringe, and it worked out for her very well. Yeah. So how is he doing today? What's going on with him today?
So I am proud to say that I've been able to get some sleep now, because after he got surgery, I had to hold him throughout the whole night. It was very, just because he was in so much pain. And then obviously he had to wear the no-nos. So I'm sure you're familiar with that, the pedi wrap that we got from the hospital. So I think he knew that he had just gotten surgery, and I think he wanted to itch his face and just know what's going on with it. So just being in pain and having to wear the pedi wraps and all these changes going on, it was a lot for him. But as of today, he's definitely doing much better. His scab, I think after they closed the incision, it's called derma glue, I want to say it's called, but it's scabbed over, and the scab actually fell off. So now I can see how great it's starting to look now that the cut has been closed. So yeah, it's still going to be a long journey, but this was step one. But he's doing really well, and he's now trying to walk. So that's going to be he's definitely a lot more active, and he's recovering well. So it's again just been such a journey, but he's doing great. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. So when you saw him after surgery and you saw his face, or even now, like now that you're seeing what he's going to look like, are you like, I miss him?
Yeah. No, I've heard that where lots of families grieve over not seeing having the cleft lip. And it's definitely hard. I took a lot of pictures, and it's just thinking about, okay, he's going in for a life-changing surgery. He's going to look like a completely different person. But I know at the same time, too, for health reasons, I'm so happy that he got it fixed. And I'll just have to look back at his pictures and just have my little moments. But no, he looks great. He looks wonderful. He's such a great baby.
I love that. I love to hear that. So what do you think has been like the hardest part of your journey?
So I would say like in the beginning, just not knowing all of the resources that were available to me, that was the hardest, because after he was born, there were some issues with his respiratory rate, which related back to his VSD. And he probably went to the emergency room at least 10 to 13 times since he's been born. And then also he was admitted at Children's for a couple days after he was born. I think that was the hardest part, was just making sure I keep track of who do I call when, XYZ happens. So if his respiratory is rate, who do I get in contact with to find out the next steps? If he's dehydrated, who do I contact? If there's issues with him feeding or just anything related to his cleft lip or palate, like who do I call? So that was difficult, just coming up with that list and just having all my resources together. And then for me personally, if I'm having a breakdown or if I need someone to talk to about things that I'm going through, like who do I reach out to? Just really forming that support group and finding those resources. I think that was the hardest part. Now things are much better, but I will say for those moms out there that are pregnant with a baby that's going to have craniofacial anomalies, like there is help out there. There is support. And I'm hopeful too, obviously through your podcast and everything, like you'll provide that hope to those families out there, because it is a lot to go through. It's definitely an emotional roller coaster. And at the end of the day, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not going to be easy, but you're not alone. So I think that's the most important thing to remember, is that there is support out there.
Yeah, I think this is actually a perfect segue into our Cleft Mom question of the week. And it's about managing your emotions. The question is, do you ever experience anger? My daughter is 2 months and we're preparing for lip surgery. I can't stop thinking about everything we have to go through and how I didn't get the opportunity to breastfeed my child or have the same bond that I had with my other children. It creates a lot of resentment and anger in me. How do I manage my emotions through our journey?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And that's something too that I struggled with as well. And being a mom too, you just have to be very patient. Yes, you may feel that you got robbed from your experiences that you had with your other child, but at the same time too, I think mental health is just so important. I think whether it's reaching out to a close friend or family member, or finding a support group, or going to therapy, or talking to your doctor, and just voicing what you're feeling and just getting that help. And I think that's very important, because you can't do this alone. And if you're feeling angry or upset about the challenges that you're facing, again, just know that you're not alone. There's plenty of families out there that are going through the same difficulties. And you just have to realize at the end of the day, you've been blessed with another child. And yes, of course, they may have these health challenges, but there are solutions to them. And at the end of the day, like I've said before, there's just plenty of resources out there to help you get through it.
Speaking of another resource, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your nonprofit organization, Cleft Lip Warriors.
Yeah, so Cleft Lip Warriors was just inspired obviously through Liam. So Liam's name means warrior. So then he also has the cleft lip. So then warriors. So tie that all in together, and I came up with Cleft Lip Warriors. Right now, we just started like a couple months ago, but we're currently fundraising for Children's National because that's where Liam has received the majority of his care. And there is a website too, cleftlipwarriors.org, that you can check out. And I do write blogs on there about different topics related to feeding, and then the emotional aspect of going through having a baby born with cleft lip. There's also a page on there called Warrior Spotlight, where it has different families talking about their experiences about finding out that their child would be born with cleft lip or cleft palate. So it's a really great resource, and obviously too doing the fundraiser for Children's National. And I did want to also note too that they have a race coming up in October. You can find out more information on the website, and it's just a really great cause. So check it out when you have some time, cleftlipwarriors.org.
Thank you so much for that. And we'll also provide all of those links and stuff in the show notes as well, just in case you all are interested in that and you want to donate or sign up for the race. We would love to support in any way that we can. So we'll have that available for you all. So just in closing, I would love to hear, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey? And also if you can share just anything else that you've wanted to share about Liam that we didn't get to talk about today.
Sure. So I would say my biggest lesson learned is just trust your mommy instinct. So after I gave birth to Liam, I remember the cardiologist wanted to have his echo done months out. And my mommy heart was literally telling me, no, you should have his echo sooner. So I was literally calling Children's over and over again, trying to push up that appointment. And I was right, because when he went into that appointment, that's when they found out there were more complications with his heart. So that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned. If you have any gut feeling about something related to your child, just go with it. Even if you're wrong, at least you explored that option and just got in touch with the right doctors to see if there was actually something else wrong. So that was definitely a big lesson that I learned. And then also too, just being your own advocate or your child's own advocate. So if you're not able to reach somebody that can help your child, just keep calling, keep emailing them, make your presence known. So I've done that. So now when I go into these appointments, they know who Liam Foreman is. So it's just really important to just make sure you're a strong advocate for your child and don't take no for an answer. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned throughout this process. And then with Liam, I would say personality-wise, I think just because he's been through so much and he's been at the hospital so many times and he's been pricked and poked and all this. So now he's like very feisty. He's always trying to punch me or try to poke me or his brother. I think he's just always trying to swat people away, but he's just such a gem. And it was really funny when we checking out at Children's, getting prepared for discharge. He had 2 IVs in him, and the nurse came in and she was wondering where the second IV went. It turns out Liam had pulled it off. So I don't understand how he did that, because there's a needle in it, but I think he was just like ready to go. Like, I'm out of here, guys. He's definitely a warrior for sure. So running Liam fits him well. So full of personality. He's just an amazing child. So very grateful.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your story here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you're so welcome. You're always welcome back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.